Imagine this, not a scandal, not a scream, but a calm smile after betrayal. That smile? It's the weapon in 2026. Relationships don't collapse with explosions. They rot through logic. The moment evidence appears, the conversation flips, and suddenly you're the criminal. This isn't drama. It's dark psychology in daily life. Accountability is replaced by accusation. Guilt is rerouted, and truth becomes optional. I've watched men freeze as reality gets rewritten in real time. One text becomes harassment. One question becomes control. One boundary becomes abuse. And here's the hook. It works because it feels emotional, not logical. Your instincts scream something's wrong, but the narrative says you're wrong. That inner conflict, that's the trap. Today's entitlement doesn't shout. It reframes. It doesn't deny facts. It attacks your right to notice them. By the end of this video, you'll recognize the pattern, feel the tension, and realize why escape is nearly impossible. Here's where the pattern sharpens. The moment a man notices an inconsistency, the script activates. Questions are no longer questions, they're threats. Curiosity becomes insecurity. Memory becomes manipulation. You're not arguing facts anymore. You're defending your character. Watch how fast it happens. You ask why the story changed. Suddenly you're obsessed with control. You mention a boundary. Now you're emotionally unavailable. The trick is speed. Move fast enough and the original issue disappears. The lie dissolves. The focus shifts. Now you're explaining tone, timing, and intent, while the actual behavior vanishes into smoke. That's not accidental, it's psychological judo. Your stability becomes the target, because once you doubt yourself, resistance collapses. And here's the cliffhanger. Once this tactic works once, it never stops. The question is, why do so many men stay after seeing it? Because hope is the leash. That's the uncomfortable truth. Men stay because they believe clarity is coming, an apology, accountability, closure. Dark psychology exploits optimism. The system feeds you just enough warmth to keep you invested, then pulls it away the moment you push back. One good night erases 10 bad conversations. One tear resets the scoreboard. This is intermittent reinforcement, the same mechanism used in gambling addiction. You're not staying because it's good. You're staying because it might become good again. And every time you tolerate the flip, the rewrite, the blame shift, the behavior is reinforced. She learns exactly how far she can go. Every boundary you restate but don't enforce becomes a suggestion, not a rule. And here's the dangerous part. Over time, you stop trusting your own perception. You start pre-editing your thoughts. That's when control is complete. But the pattern doesn't end there. It escalates. Escalation always follows tolerance. Once reality bending works, power demands expansion. What started as emotional reframing becomes social pressure. Now the conflict isn't just between two people, it's public. Friends get involved. Posts appear. Vague captions. Carefully chosen words. Dark psychology thrives in crowds. The more eyes watching, the harder it is for you to defend yourself. You can't explain context in a comment section. You can't fight a narrative built on feelings. Silence looks like guilt. Defense looks like aggression. Suddenly, you're isolated. That's not accidental. Isolation weakens resistance. When accountability fails privately, it seeks validation publicly. Sympathy becomes currency. Victimhood becomes leverage. The original behavior? It remains untouched, protected by noise. And here's the twist. Once outsiders reinforce her story, she fully believes it herself. At that point, you're no longer arguing with a person. You're arguing with a belief system. And belief systems don't negotiate. Now comes the phase that quietly breaks men. Conditional affection. Love with terms and conditions written in invisible ink. As long as you provide, comply, and absorb, you're praised. The moment you hesitate, affection freezes. Tone changes. Distance appears. Dark psychology calls this reward withdrawal. It's subtle but devastating. You start working harder just to restore normalcy. You invest more time, more money, more patience, chasing the version of her that existed before you pushed back. But that version was never permanent. It was a tool. And here's the hook most men miss. The relationship doesn't collapse when you fail. It collapses when you stop overperforming. Entitlement isn't emotional, it's structural. She expects benefits without reciprocity, effort without return, loyalty without consistency. And once you see that, the question becomes terrifying. Was it ever about you, or only about what you supplied? Here's where logic officially becomes the enemy. Facts stop mattering. Timelines blur. Receipts are mocked. Dark psychology flips reality into emotion-only court. If the feeling is strong enough, the fact is dismissed. You show proof, you're keeping score. You remember dates. You're obsessive. You stay calm. You're cold. Every rational tool you use is reframed as a flaw. That's deliberate. Logic threatens entitlement. Once facts enter the room, the illusion cracks, so they attack the method instead of the message. And slowly you adapt. You stop documenting. You stop explaining. You stop questioning. Not because you're convinced, but because you're tired. Exhaustion becomes compliance. This is where many men lose themselves, not in one dramatic moment, but in 1,000 small surrenders. And the next phase, that's when consequences are outsourced. When personal pressure fails, institutions enter the game. Authority becomes the final weapon. Legal threats, labels, diagnoses, dark psychology loves borrowed power. Suddenly disagreement is harassment. Boundaries are emotional abuse. Distance is abandonment. The language isn't accidental, it's strategic. Once a man is framed as dangerous, his voice loses weight. He becomes defensive by default. Even the fear of accusation is enough to force compliance. And here's the chilling part. Many men don't leave because they can't. They stay because leaving feels riskier. Reputation, career, access to children, all silently held hostage. Entitlement evolves into coercion, not always spoken, but always implied. And once fear replaces respect, the relationship is already dead. What remains is control. But control, like all unstable systems, eventually overreaches. Overreach is inevitable because entitlement has no off switch. The demands increase. The rules multiply. What was tolerated yesterday becomes expected today. Dark psychology calls this normalization creep. You adjust once, then again, until your original standards feel like ancient history. You forget what peace felt like. You forget what mutual effort looked like. And here's the quiet horror. When you finally push back, the reaction is disproportionate. Rage, tears, threats, smear campaigns. Because from her perspective, you didn't set a boundary. You violated a right. Entitlement reframes compliance as obligation. So when you withdraw it, you're suddenly cruel, heartless, unsafe. This is why the exit phase is always the most chaotic. Not because you changed, but because the system lost control. And once control slips, desperation takes over. That's when the mask fully drops. When the mask drops, clarity finally arrives, but it's rarely gentle. You see patterns you ignored, conversations that never resolved, promises that never materialized. Dark psychology depends on fog, and now the fog is gone. The same person who demanded endless empathy suddenly shows none. The same one who preached communication refuses dialogue. This isn't confusion, it's exposure. And here's the brutal realization. Nothing you did caused this shift. You didn't fail. You simply stopped feeding entitlement. Once benefits disappear, attachment dissolves. That's why departures are rewritten as betrayals. Boundaries are reframed as cruelty. Self-respect becomes selfishness. The narrative must survive, even if the relationship doesn't. And this is the final test. Will you retreat back into guilt or step forward into clarity? This is the final frame, and it's the one most men reach too late. Entitlement only survives where it's rewarded. The moment you stop negotiating your self-respect, the illusion collapses. Dark psychology loses power when patterns are named. Once you understand the mechanics, the guilt evaporates. You realize you weren't bad at relationships. You were overfunctioning in a broken system. The peace you feel leaving isn't emptiness, it's relief. And here's the real twist. Walking away isn't punishment. It's the only boundary that actually works. No speeches, no ultimatums, no explanations to people committed to misunderstanding you. Clarity doesn't require permission. The men who win in 2026 aren't louder, colder, or crueler. They're simply unavailable to manipulation. They choose reciprocity, not hope. Awareness is the exit. And once you see it, you can't unsee it.